All right, today my guest is Haley Strack. She is the Buckley Fellow at National Review, a writer, and she wrote an article that caught my eye entitled "No, Diamonds Aren't Platonic," and I wanted to talk to her about that. Kind of piqued my interest. So I guess, Haley, thank you for coming on and being on the show, and tell us, I guess, what piqued your interest about writing about diamond companies having to remarket a little bit differently these days.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I originally saw this article in The Atlantic about diamond companies rebranding as platonic, and I kind of thought it was, a semblant of what diamond companies have tried to do since the sexual revolution, which is try and make diamonds more appealing to women who like diamonds but don't really have a man or don't otherwise want to be dependent on men to buy them diamonds, which we know is pretty farcical. I mean, diamonds are immediately associated with engagement rings and anything sort of romantic, right?
Yeah.
Diamonds are romantic. Diamonds are eternal. Diamonds are supposed to be the stone that symbolizes love. And as a young female, I myself love a good diamond.
Right.
So when I saw this platonic rebrand, it was a little confusing, and I hoped that it wasn't just some sort of social pandering to the feminist movement bot. And I mean, in a good and bad way, it wasn't, in fact, another, kind of feminist-fueled campaign, right? Unfortunately, it's really sad what diamond companies are having to do to combat the decline in marriage rates and frankly, the decline in romance everywhere in this country. Diamond companies are really wrestling as to how to sell diamonds, especially after COVID. No one's meeting each other. The amount of engagements are dropping and they're only going to continue to decline. And especially now after the 2-year gap in people having met each other. I mean, 2 years, you could say, is a pretty realistic time span before someone would get engaged. So now there's just a humongous lapse of engagement and marriages in the country. And they're really trying to figure out how to kickstart the diamond industry.
It's interesting because you hear, I've heard forever that like the diamond industry is obviously the people that came up with a lot of the marketing for diamonds being romantic, and even the like, hey, you should save up X amount of your salary or 2 months salary or whatever. All those things were basically come from the diamond industry. So it's a little interesting that now that has fallen off so precipitously. I mean, obviously, I think the stats I have are like, okay, from your article, you said 83% of Gen Z see themselves getting married at some point. But at the same time, it's declined 60%, the marriage rate in the last 50 years since 1970. Yeah. So those are not necessarily lining up because, I think the other stat I found was like 25% of people my age. So I'm older than you, I assume. You look like you're young 20s maybe. I'm 40.
Yes.
But even 40-year-olds, 25% of us have never been married. Yeah. Obviously, that causes all sorts of economic and structural, social issues as well. But it's just interesting that it's finding its way into the, how are we going to sell diamonds?
Right. And it's depressing on both ends too. I think our young people's general feeling toward marriage, as we mentioned in the article, 83% of people say they want to get married someday. And I just read another stat that I think people in their young 20s, 70% say specifically they're looking forward to their wedding day. And it's so sad when you then look at the percentage of those people who are actually in relationships or who are pursuing romantic relationships, maybe offline, which is, also declining rapidly.
Right.
We don't really have in-person interactions anymore, which is another reason why we might not be forming those kind of engagements. But yeah, it's sad that the diamond companies have no answer, and it's sad that people are looking for an answer, and that diamond companies aren't at least willing to give it their best shot at making diamonds romantic again, which I think it is a bit romantic, as I mentioned in the article, to think or to believe that diamond companies hold such a strong sway over the market that they could realistically put out campaigns that would make people want to go meet someone and fall in love, or that would make a man want to propose after a couple of years. But it could happen. It's happened before. A diamond is forever, right? We all remember that campaign. So many movies came out after about diamonds. We know what sells, and it's love, because every human has an inclination toward it.
Do you think that, you mentioned in the article that we're even stripping out romance and stuff from pop culture and from movies and things. And you mentioned Snow White in it, in the sense that's like they're sort of advertising, at least right now. They haven't even made this movie yet, but we're talking about it constantly because it's like, oh, it's not going to be dwarfs. There's not going to be a Prince Charming that comes in and saves the thing. Do you think? I mean, it seems like, okay, if 83% of millennials are Gen Z, sorry, wrong generation, if they want to get married, obviously it seems like they want romance, but maybe they're not. Is it just being pursued last? Is it like career and all the other stuff coming first? Or what do you, I mean, just your personal theory about how that's happening?
Yeah, so anecdotally, I mean, I've had a bit of a different upbringing, I think, than most young people. I grew up in California, so it was kind of assimilated into a more pro-career, anti-marriage culture there. But again, community and family matters a lot, and my family placed a lot of respect and priority on family life. And so I always knew that was something I wanted to pursue. And then I ended up going to a relatively conservative college where a lot of people had the same values as I did. So I didn't really have to combat the, just the tension between young people and relationships.
Yeah.
And if you should pursue a career before you pursue friendships or romantic relationships. But what's interesting about the Snow White actress in particular is that she's in a very successful relationship herself. And, and she, so she's telling young women, which is what a lot of, third wave feminists have done. She's telling young women, hey, look, you can survive without a man, and you, in fact, should aim to survive without a man. You should reach financial independence before you find a person, and before you settle down, and before you think about that stage in your life that, might make you happy, but certainly won't make you as happy as a career will. She's telling young women that, and it's rhetoric that's failed us miserably. It's just not true. We all want love.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how that got so lost. And it's fine to pursue careers. It's fine to pursue other interests, but not at the expense of your ultimate happiness, which, I mean, mankind has shown us for generations, for thousands of years, is another person.
Right. Especially when you look at I realize some marriages end in divorce, obviously, but like, let's take that off the table and just say, like, theoretically you're getting married to stay married for forever. Most people now don't stay in the same career for even 5 or 10 years at a time. And so it seems like we're changing that so often. So it seems like marriage would be the anchor, like to have that person that can go through all of that, whatever job changes or having kids or taking care of older parents and things like that. These are things that you are doing life together with this person for. So it seems weird to me that we're putting it at the end of the things of the to-do list. It seems like it's like, go to college, get a career, advance in that career, maybe find time to date people if you can manage to do that while you're working your butt off to try to advance your career. But then maybe people are finding themselves in their 30s going like, oh, wait, maybe the good people have been snatched up. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to know because I met my wife when we were 20 and 22, and we didn't get married for like 4.5 years. I was in a band at the time, so talking about there was a bit of a priority. But I'd like to have a paying job before I'm like, not sleeping on floors and stuff before we get married. But I certainly wasn't like trying. I mean, we went about it probably more of a normal way of like neither one of us had like, we weren't making bank when we got married, but we've gone through all this stuff together, and it seems like I don't want someone that's going to leave me if I don't have that career that they married or, the money that they married or whatever. But do you think that that's how people, because you're younger than me. And so, I mean, do you see that with friends? Do you see that they want that and they prioritize it? Or does it just seem that it's like a thing on a list, but they're not really actioning anything to make it happen?
I'll give you two answers. One is personal because, again, my anecdotes are going to be super different than maybe another young person somewhere. But actually, my best friend is getting married. My other best friend has a baby and is already married, and she's a year younger than me. She's 21, and the one getting married this December is 22, and we're planning engagement parties for a few more of our friends next year.
And a lot of the young thick people, of it right now. Okay.
I am indeed. But a lot of young people who I know too, in this city specifically, I would say, in DC, 22 to maybe 29, 30-ish. Everyone realizes once you get to a year or two into their career, okay, what's next? especially the Christian population here, which frankly is a lot bigger in DC than you'd expect, which is wonderful. But especially a religious population, everyone thinks after you have secured the job, oh, this actually isn't as fulfilling as I thought it might be.
Right.
What next? What next? And then I think there's another portion of the population that might be a little more online, and who certainly grew up in a generation with much more media than I did. I mean, I know I'm very young, but I wasn't on social media a lot, and I don't do the TikTok thing.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, good. Thank God.
We're both out of date on the.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Indeed. But a lot of people who are on TikTok or who are on, dating apps or who really embrace hookup culture as the alternative to romantic relationships. So if you want to pursue a career, that's okay. We can put off a romantic relationship until later and just, find a quick hookup for now to momentarily fulfill that sort of gap in your life, that hole, the thing that's missing, which is, of course, human connection.
Right.
But a lot of those people, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. They wait until they're about 30, 35. They get sad. They start freezing their eggs, which has also increased lately, which is just, I mean, it's insane, but it's also sad. It's another reminder that what people want is what society is telling them not to achieve when they're young. I mean, it goes against so much that we've learned about just human behaviors and just patterns of behaviors in the last maybe 40 years that we've been taught to shun, all for the pursuit of a career.
And what's interesting about that, I mean, you mentioned like the hookup culture stuff, and this is definitely like a new thing. And I was never, my wife and I technically met on MySpace. Oh my gosh, which makes me sound so incredibly old, because that's a totally defunct social networking thing. But like, it wasn't like an online dating thing. And I just obviously, so I've never navigated that at all. But I mean, I see the stats that say people are even having, I mean, even into teenagers and stuff, which I mean, I think we'd sometimes say teenagers having less sex is a good thing, but teenagers and people in their 20s are having less sex, even just like outside of marriage and stuff. So, I mean, it seems like all of this is, okay, less sex, less like, relational happiness, less marriage, I would assume fewer kids in all this stuff. And people think the world peak population is going to be in this century. And like most of the developing countries are losing population. This obviously is going to be something that has like long-term repercussions. So it seems like something that there could be policies that help, but I don't know, this might not be a thing that policy can win. I don't know that it can, but do you have any suggested ones or ways to fix it?
It's a good question. And it's, I mean, as a conservative, it's hard to navigate the sort of family life balance when you talk about policy, because on one hand, you don't really want much government interference in family life. Right. But on the other hand, you recognize this problem that's facing us, honestly, and not only nationwide, but globally. I think Israel is the only population or the only country that has an increased birth rate right now. And that's just because they're surrounded by threats, like everywhere you look, right? They have no choice. It's like purely survival. And I mean, religion plays a large part as well. But their survival instinct is, okay, we need to continue on the next generations. And we have the luxury of not thinking about that until it's too late, because we've been so liberated from that thought, you could say. So I mean, I think pro family policies might help. Specifically, a lot of women talk about giving women more time off, more paid time off, giving husbands and fathers more paid time off after you have a child. I wouldn't say I'm so on board with those policies, just because again, they create a level of interference in family that might not be preferable. But also, you talk about healthcare reforms and how we can better support women in hospitals when they do have children, which also you can get into the weeds about with just different and also theological interpretations of what the birth process might look like, which is a lot of GOP women who are religious might actually care about that, but they're niche concerns. But I mean, I do think that there are policy experts much better suited than I to answer this question, who have realistic ideas that might help. If our government is spending so much money on very pointless other family
Oh my
initiatives,
gosh.
or
Yeah.
you know, like affirming LGBTQ or affirming any sort of gender transition surgery, then we should absolutely be investing at least the same amount of money into ensuring that women have the same amount of health care when they go to have children, right?
Yeah, especially because this seems like the kind of problem that's not, it's going to sneak up on us. And when like, by the
Right.
time it's too late, you can't like fix the problem immediately. You can't like have kids and have them grow up to be a workforce immediately. That's something that
No.
takes 20 or 30 years. So it's something that we're going to have to think about right now. I'm kind of with you. I don't know that there is like a policy or
Yeah.
some federal government. I mean, I think there are incentives, obviously. And right now, maybe we're not in having the correct incentive structure to be like, hey, marriage is good. I also think that people just aren't saying marriage is a good thing. I think that you find the example of the actress playing Snow White, like instead of coming out and being like, I think romance is awesome, like I found my Prince
Yeah.
Charming in real life kind of thing, it seems like the opportunity to be like, it's great to have a partner to go through life with. And it just doesn't seem like that is I feel like that is maybe changing a little bit. I've noticed, like, as a 40-year-old guy that used to be a musician, I'm going to see all these tours where these
Yeah.
people I liked when I was younger, and they're now doing these like 20-year anniversary tours and stuff. And a lot of them are bringing their kids on stage to like play with them. And it's almost like kind of, I'm seeing a little bit more of the embracing of like, hey, we're like normal, like husbands and dads and stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of the like, I'm pretending to be single thing. So maybe there's a little bit of that cultural changing a little bit, but I don't know.
I think there's hope. I think there's absolutely hope. Where the GOP specifically gets a lot of this wrong, I think, is in the sphere of social media. Young people are chronically online, we know this, and there aren't many positive examples for women of moms on social media, I don't think, especially in conservative media. If that's where you're looking, you have one, you know, very traditional, as they're called, the kind of trad caths, the trad Catholics on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, and you see their lives and their perfection, and you can aspire to have those lives, but those women certainly don't give you helpful advice or monikers on how to get there, and they also portray a sort of femininity that a lot of people find off-putting or
Yeah.
maybe desirable but not at all attainable. So that doesn't help. And the other thing that doesn't help is another group of women of Republican women who do only like pursue their career and then say, and kids are important and I have kids and I love them and they're, my favorite thing in the world. But they talk much less about them online because they just don't have the time. I mean, if you
Right.
have children and you have a career, I mean, you're not going to add your tertiary priority as displaying both of those things on social media. You know what I mean? Like if you're succeeding in both of those aspects of your life, family and, public or just career oriented, you don't have the time to get on TikTok and post a video of my daily routine as a mom with 3 kids going to the Senate or something like that. You don't have the time, and you're not going to do it. So we don't have super positive role models for that. I will say, though, an article we published maybe a month or two ago on the Barbie movie. There was my favorite scene in the Barbie movie. I thought the movie was kind of a bit of a bore. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. It was fine. It was a movie. But the
As
very
it's supposed
end,
to be. Yeah.
the
Supposed to
very
entertain me
end
for 2
scene,
hours. Yeah.
right? It did its job, I guess. The very end scene, though, it was really interesting because Greta Gerwig had the whole cast submit home videos of, what it meant to feel like a woman. And just what it meant to feel like a human. In the final scene, Barbie is kind of contemplating, do I want to be a human? Do I want to stay a doll? Do I want to stay plastic, have no feelings, no emotion? And she asks, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to feel? And Greta Gerwig puts together this beautiful montage from the cast, and it's home videos of moms, of kids taking their first steps, of aunts and of grandmothers just celebrating life together. And it's heartening to know, especially in Hollywood, that the reigning sentiment over womanhood is still family, is still, love, right? Going back to Diamonds, of just wanting those human connections. And it's something that, I mean, we all deserve. Human dignity comes down to it. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to know that there is some sort of hope, because this isn't a feeling that's going away. We're never going to feel
Right.
Like, okay, maybe instead of trying to improve marriage rates, we should just accept that they've gone down, accept that people aren't going to enter relationships. That's not probable and that's not true. We don't want that to happen, so it's not going to.
Exactly, because I don't think most of those people are happy in that life,
No.
as we've seen by the statistics and suicide rates and all the sort of things that come along with it. It doesn't seem like those other things are fulfilling them like the relationship would of a spouse. And so, yeah, I encourage anyone obviously to get married. It's not that it's a fairy tale the whole time, obviously. It's hard
Right.
work and it makes you be less selfish all the time, which is hard, obviously, to become less selfish over and over every day, especially when you have kids. But yeah, to me, it's worthwhile. Especially you mentioned at the end of the movie, it's like that is the stuff that matters. It's like time with your kids, time with your family, time with your friends, and all of that stems from this original, kind of marriage thing. I mean, that's how you traditionally have kids and stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's a worthwhile effort. With no real answers to how we solve it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's worth it. And good luck to the diamond companies, I guess. Would you buy a platonic diamond for a friend? I mean, I've got to ask, as someone that's probably in the market that they're trying to target for this, of like maybe they would. Let's just pretend you had all the money in the world.
Right. After I wrote that article, my girlfriends were texting me saying, am I planning to drop 7 or 8,000 on their next birthday gift? No, the answer is I would absolutely not buy platonic diamonds.
Okay, so we don't think the advertising's going to work.
No,
Yeah.
no, absolutely not. I mean, I wish. I hope that for some of my friends who might think about buying me diamonds, it would. But
yeah,
but
maybe
no,
it'll
won't.
happen. It doesn't seem very likely. I personally do not know anyone that
Right.
bought a diamond for another female themselves.
Right.
Other
never
than
know.
inherited ones. But yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll catch on.
Yeah, the family jewels I'll take.
Yeah, family ones. Yeah, definitely inherit. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, Haley. Appreciate you coming on and talking against this is Haley Strack. She's the Buckley Fellow for National Review and writer of the article "No Diamonds Aren't Platonic," which we'll put in the show notes. Thanks for coming on. We'll look forward to having you again sometime.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.